Hello, and welcome to the CCS Acquisitions Technical Group. I am Penny Ramirez. I am your chair for this fabulous year. We have Victoria from Niles and Brenda from ELA are our other officers. I left introductions on this agenda and then realized we don't all see each other at this point, so I don't know if we have any introductions to make. Is anybody new to the group that wants to say hi? Okay. Does anyone have any additions to the agenda that they would like to make? Either raise your hand or go ahead and unmute yourself. No? All right, well, let's move on then to number 4, which is approval of the minutes from our last meeting, which was actually way back in September. 6 months ago, I guess. So does anyone have any corrections to the minutes or comments on the minutes?
None that I can see.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting?
So moved to approve the minutes from September 20.
All right, that's Victoria. Does someone second? I see a second in chat. Great. All right. The minutes are approved. We can move on to CCS staff reports. I'm going to turn it over to the Rachel Show.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Deborah could not attend the meeting today, so I will be covering the topics that she would normally speak about in her staff report, as well as mine today. So I'm happy to report that the website RFP process is going really well. CCS received bids from numerous companies and selected 2 finalists. The CCS staff heard presentations from 2 vendor finalists and selected 1 company to be the vendor. The contract was reviewed by governing board at their February meeting. So if you were at the CAM meeting or read the notes, I do want to review some of the things that I mentioned previously at the CAM meeting. The training server has been updated to 6.7. Mieko and I will be leading the 6.7 training sessions in March and April. I've scheduled the technical services training for March 17th at 1 p.m. If you're interested in attending, you can register on L2. Production will be then upgraded in April after the training. A new section has been added to the training site for technical services and LEAP. This includes a course on serials check-in. However, the cataloging course cannot be added until after the 7.0 update has been released. The majority of all serials check-in functions have been added to LEAP. However, LEAP cannot create new issues without predicting future issues yet, nor can labels be printed yet. Not enough copy cataloging features have been added to LEAP for me to recommend using it yet. Deduplication and editing MARC records will not be added until the 7.0 update. This will be released in June. However, the 7.0 update will not include spine label printing yet. So according to Innovative's product roadmap, they do plan to implement the acquisitions API during the 7.0 update. So this will be really exciting for acquisitions. This will happen in June. We will find out more when the documentation is released, but to provide an overview of what this could look like, API stands for Application Programming Interface. It allows software programs to send and receive data to and from the other programs. So the API supports the ability for third-party vendors to pass purchase order data directly to Polaris in order to create a PO automatically. This automates the acquisitions workflow and reduces staff time spent creating purchase orders. However, there still is some unknown information. Vendors will need to develop an interface on their end, so we do not know when they will complete this. It may be before the API is released and be working with Innovative, but they might not be working yet with Innovative. It might be after the API has been released. Vendors may also choose to charge to use their API to send the order information to Polaris. When I worked for a vendor, that vendor did charge the libraries for the use of the API. So after the API has been released, you will need to speak with your vendors for more information on how to set it up on their end and and what they might charge for it. So I can imagine this would be something that would be set up in the administration settings. So this is something that CCS will need to help you set up. We'll have to put in an API key, which is like a password, and other information so that the API can communicate with your vendors. So recently I sent out some emails regarding unprocessed 970s. So I would like to summarize that issue again as a recap. The 970 fields in the bibliographic records are used to automate the process of creating polys. A process note is added to a subfield 9 field in the 970 after it has been used. If a 970 isn't used to create the poly and add the poly to the purchase order, the subfield 9 field is not added to that 970 field. So this can happen when multiple copies are ordered or when the poly is not created using that 970. So this causes the information from an unprocessed 970 to be visible in the polys of other libraries if they order using that bibliographic record that has unprocessed 970s in it. So Bob has created a great report on the Web Reports website to be able to help you identify unprocessed 970s. This report is called Bibs with tag 970 without a subfield 9. So you can use that report to identify if your library has any 970s that need to be cleaned up. On the screen, there is a link to a document that I did send out to the listserv already that provides some information on how to correct the 970s using a bibliographic bulk change. So you can either correct it by adding the subfield 9 process note, and there's an example on the screen of how that should look like with the date and time, or you are welcome to delete the 970s if you're not going to be using them. So reports have also come in recently on excessive amounts of duplicate on order records. Purposely saving duplicate on order records is acceptable when it is necessary to order the correct format or volume. However, Polaris cannot deduplicate records automatically when there are already 2 records in the database. So please keep duplicate on order records to a minimum. The duplicate detection settings in your import profile can be set to automatically reject incoming records that are duplicates, but add their attention tags to existing records. So please check that your import profiles for on-order records are set up properly. I also have some information on the screen that links to our videos and a new catalog wiki page with guidance on merging duplicate records. So I see a comment that came in the chat. So Kathy asks, how often is the Bibs without 970s processed report run, and is the output cumulative? I believe it's run weekly, and the report will automatically update to remove any of the records that had the 970 corrected, and add any new records that have the 970 in it without the process note. So one other reminder that I have for today, reports have continued to come in on the 099 field from the on order records. Sorry, the reports have continued to come in of 099 fields missing from the on order records. So this is probably in records that were hand keyed or imported from OCLC and not the records that were imported from the vendors. So just a reminder to please review the bibliographic input standards with the staff that hand key the on order records. A link to this is in the screen, and I'll make sure that you get a copy of this PowerPoint after the presentation. Let's see, I'm having trouble getting back to the chat because my screen is being a bit finicky. 1 second. I did see a question that came in. So does the 970 with process get deleted? Eventually, at some point, there is a bulk deletion that does happen. I'm not sure how often that actually happens. Deborah's not here to answer that. Maybe someone else remembers how often the 970s are deleted. No.
Did I see Jamie on the call? Is he? Jamie, do you remember? No. You're my expert. All right, well, thank you, Rachel. If there aren't any other questions for Rachel, we can move on to business. Joe had a topic on how our library is handling no charge replacements from vendors. Joe, do you want to ask your questions?
Sure. We recently had an order that got lost in delivery. Apparently it went through the post office and it made it to the post office, but never to our library. So what Baker and Taylor did was they had us pay that invoice, and then we're going to replace all of those items as like no charge. So what they've been doing is sending the books as they're available, and I'm sure other people are having issues with that it takes months to get materials from Baker and Taylor. So they didn't all come together. So we had some in one order, some in another order, and we still haven't gotten a couple of the items. But in order to pay it, we had to receive everything. Somebody knows another way to do that. But when you receive it, it shows that the item is in process, but they're really not because they're not there. So I'm not sure if we're missing something that we should be doing. So I just kind of wanted to know, have other libraries had no charge replacement items? And if so, how are they handling them?
Feel free to unmute yourselves and respond.
It's a really great question. I don't know that we've had any since we went to Polaris.
Bill Owens responded in chat. We put non-public notes and change the status to repair in the item records until the items come in.
Okay. If the items are then on in a repair status, do you know, would they show up? We have a hold report that gets run 3 times a day, so that if we don't catch items when they're first received or after they're received, then holds get placed, that we get this report 3 times a day so that we can keep up and get materials out that everybody wants, especially with everything that's been going on with our construction project and stuff like that. So some days we have these items that keep popping up on our hold report. So if it's in repair, does that stop it from being available for holds?
I believe so.
Brenda responded that she also thinks so, and says that Ayla has had these but haven't had to pay first. She said that she usually pays only after the item is in hand.
This is like from Palatine. Recently, this is through Ingram, not through Baker and Taylor, where a package was never delivered and it got sent back to Ingram. And we didn't have to pay for it. What they did was they ended up canceling the invoice for us. And then I just had to reorder it.
Okay.
And then the other issue that I had, again, is just with Ingram, and I think they're easier to work with, was like a damage book, which we do pay for it first. And then I keep track of it to make sure that they actually sent a replacement for us. Yeah.
Okay, when you have that damaged item, then do you leave it as in process or do you change it?
I leave it in process.
Okay. And
because if we put it in repair or unavailable or something, I believe a patron can't put a hold on it. So I do leave it in process, and I leave the damaged item on my desk. And so when the actual replacement come in, then I just toss the old one away and go ahead and give the new one to the processor or the cataloger, sorry.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Do have some more comments coming in. Keith Walker said that he pays first, then changes it to repair as well. He has a spreadsheet to keep track of pending items until they arrive. If it cannot be replaced, he still pays first and is then issued a credit later on. Kathy says, I think patrons can place holds on the items with the repair status. We do get holds on items with repair status. So I'm not an expert on holds. It's something I'll have to follow up with Mieko about.
I think if it's in repair, you can place a hold, but it won't trap the hold.
Okay,
so
we
I
just
think that's
want
what
to
your
make sure
report
that
does, right? Is it's trapping a hold.
No, the report is alerting us that we have items in processing that have holds.
Oh, okay.
And so we'll pull those to get those cataloged first to get them out to the patron faster. Okay, these are helpful. I never thought of marking them as repair to do that. Okay, that's a good idea. Thank you.
All right, any other thoughts on the no charge replacements?
Do have a couple
more.
We
can move. Oh, sorry.
Oh, there's just a couple more comments in the chat. Brenda said that's how she handles damages as well. And she at Lincolnwood says that she does not pay until she receives the items.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Victoria, you had a question about cancellation notes in the 245.
There we go. Yes, so this is going back all the way, I believe, to the September 18 meeting where we discussed when something gets canceled on the publisher's end. So we get these notifications from Midwest Tape and Ingram, and we had discussed when a cancellation comes from one of our vendors, putting the cancellation item canceled, I believe is what we were putting in, a publication canceled into the 245, bracketed after the title so people could see it. And then if there were holds on that item, that the person who was putting the cancellation notice in the 245 would alert the acquisitions list. That way, when each library saw that, they would be responsible for notifying their circulation department or adults or whoever removes the holds, whether it's your adult services department. So the holds are removed, because we've come across titles where we're the last person on a record and there's holds on there and we didn't even know that it was canceled. So trying to find a way to do that, I believe we decided back then that that would be a good idea to do, but it's not documented anywhere. So is that a process that people want to do, or how do you want to handle this going forward? So that's my question. Thoughts, comments, suggestions?
This is Brad from Cary. My only question would be that sometimes vendors can't get the item, so they cancel it. And by making sure it's actually the publication itself is canceled and not just from the vendor would be the question.
Okay. So that's something, yeah, that we would have to be clear on from our vendor's end. And I believe that they do, I don't know if they specify whether or not it's a publication cancellation or it's a them can't, they can't get the item, but leaving items that are not coming in with holds on them isn't good practice. So, just trying to figure out how we can handle that as a consortium. I know we've been sending out emails about cancellations, but I wasn't sure if anybody else was doing that. I haven't seen a ton of them, and it was happening back in September of 18, but we haven't gone forward with it. So Rachel, any thoughts like from CCS's end? What would be, if this is something that should be done?
It sounds like a great idea to me. I think the process that was already established and that had started up again seems to work. With the emails being sent to the acquisitions list and everyone being notified, they can handle their own holds to cancel them. So I think that it's a good idea.
Okay. If we're going to go ahead with this, should we document it and put it on the website?
Sure. Do you think this is something that should be added to the catalog wiki?
I mean, if people are going to look, as, for that as a guideline, then yeah, that would be my suggestion.
Could we consider maybe a separate acquisitions corner, acquisitions page, rather than having everything all kind of together in the catalogers wiki? Because even the name catalogers wiki does not necessarily scream acquisitions work.
I think that's a great idea, Kathy.
Sure, we could put it on the learning portal instead. I think
as more and more CCS libraries move to using the acquisitions module, it would be very helpful to have.
Yeah, and I think because Karen just said that they have to run reports, so I think maybe finding out how each vendor is sending this information, and because I know we get notifications both from Ingram and Midwest Tape.
Sure. We have a procedure section of the catalog wiki, so I can add that to an acquisition section under the procedures drop-down menu.
Victoria, we get cancellation notices from Baker and Taylor, Midwest Tape, and Brodart. I know Baker and Taylor, you have to decipher the codes to determine why it's being canceled. Midwest Tapes. Keith, I'm going to call on, ask you to, since you see those and I don't, do they tell us if it's publication canceled or if we've hit our time limit? And for Brodart as well?
Apologies, I got lost in some tabs. I actually need to, I can double check that right now. It's been a while since I've handled the benefits of having all the people with me. But I don't remember having to really deal with the statuses from them.
I'm going to try and look one up real quick.
Yeah. Okay, it does have codes listed with it, with Brodart at least, because the sample I brought up has out of print as a cancel code, so they've got a list of cancel codes that they work with.
Beth Phillips responded in the chat that Midwest does give a specific reason for cancellations, although it is vague when they indicate not available, because that could mean it's still forthcoming.
Ingram and B&T send out, when they send out stuff, it does list the reason why. It can be kind of vague. The only issue is though, sometimes when like Ingram says stuff it's canceled and they delist the item from searching or finding, B&T might still keep it on there. So sometimes they both don't really communicate or have the same agreement upon if things actually canceled or not.
I just went and checked with one of my staff, and they do that it could be out of print or never released. So the out of print might be a little bit more questionable because you may be able to get it through another resource, but definitely if it's never being released, that would definitely be something to cancel. And we are looking at Midwest Tape website. Ingram does send the cancellation reports, but Midwest Tape we're looking up.
And Corinne posted some examples in the chat of the status.
All right, this sounds good. So it sounds like, Rachel, you're going to add some information to both the wiki and the portal, or just the wiki?
I'll add it to the learning portal section on acquisitions procedures.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, and then Rachel, you had number 3 or 7C, reviewing how to bulk add polys to a purchase order.
Okay. So I have heard that some are not aware that polys can be created by bulk adding them to the purchase order. So today I'm going to review this workflow because it's a really excellent way to streamline the workflow and become more efficient. So first I'd like to review the 970 field when bulk adding polys to a purchase order. The 970 field should be in the bibliographic record. This is typically set up as a grid via the vendor so that the vendor records can come with the 970 field in them. If the 970 field is missing from a record, the defaults will be applied when you bulk add the polys. So for review, here's a list of the subfields that can be in the 970 fields. Location as the branch abbreviation. So this is your 3-letter code. Quantity, fund, collection abbreviation, price, material type code, the non-public note, and the item template code. So using all of the subfields for the 970 field are not required, but can be very helpful. If all of the subfields are used, less manual work will be required. If the 970 field is missing from a record, as I said, the defaults will be applied. So these are like the defaults that are set up in a screen that I'll demonstrate when bulk adding the records. Bulk adding is done from a record set, so it's important to check that your import profiles add records to a record set. You can also utilize purchase order templates when you are bulk editing. And I am going to demonstrate now how to bulk add, and in this presentation, you'll also be able to refer to the links on the screen for the documentation and videos on bulk adding the purchase order line items. So I'm going to first open up my record set and start from the point in which my records are already in the record set. So looking at these records, you can see that I'm going to be borrowing this 970 that's already in the record from McHenry. So once everything has been already added to the record set, you can click on Tools, Add All Records To, and then New Purchase Order or Existing Purchase Order. I'm going to click New Purchase Order so that you can see the form. So Add to New Purchase Order will allow you to create the PO number. You can choose an existing template by searching for the template in the Find tool. And then you have to update the header information. Choose your supplier. So I'm going to search for a McHenry supplier. One moment, this will take a few moments to find. So I will use their Baker and Taylor EDI Youth Account supplier record. And then here's the line default information. So this information will be applied to your polys if there's information missing from the 970 field or there's no 970 field in the record. So for the price, you can choose the 0.01, 1 cent for your default price if there's no price in your 970 field. And then you'll have to also add in a default fund code and then press OK. So this has now added the records to a purchase order. We're going to open that up. That was 1204. So here you can see that my purchase order has been created and it has both of my items from the record set added to the purchase order. And in each poly, it's automatically added the discount price and collection fund that was from the 970 field and material type. So you can see that if there were, say, 50 items that I wanted to order at a time, and I had 50 items in my record set, this would help to really quickly add all of those items to a purchase order without having to add them separately to it. If you have any questions about this workflow, or if you're interested in beginning to use the acquisitions module for the first time, feel free to contact me at help@ccslib.org. We can make individual appointments to review the workflow and to help get you set up with acquisitions for the first time. Are there any questions?
No question, Rachel, but a comment.
Mm-hmm.
If you could just open up one of those bib records.
Sure.
You added a purchase order to, because one of the things we found when we were setting up EDI ordering initially, and I don't know if this is a Polaris thing that has since gone away, but when we use item template codes to push the proper item record information, that was not working well with material type and collection code, because that's the other way it matches to the item templates that you've set up for ordering. So I just kind of wanted to point that out if anyone was working with that. And it happened especially if we were ordering multiple copies of an item, but using different, matching to different templates. Like we have one for circulating copies versus hot copies versus reference copies. And if we had multiple templates we were matching to, it wouldn't match them properly and the orders would just really get all messed up. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there as a caveat for people to be aware of.
Right. This subfield H is really important. All of those little details can be really tricky if you're not matching to the correct template using that subfield H. So that is the portion that comes after the words on order in your item template. Or, I mean, the portion of the name that comes after the words on order.
This is Lei. Also with that subfield H, what I found out when I was setting up the template is that after the on order, I was told that it has to be less than 10 characters or 10 letters.
Yes.
So if it's more than 10 letters, it won't match up to the correct template.
That's a good point. Karine also posted a link to the video from the training website. And that's in the chat.
The other thing with the templates is when creating off of the 970, there's only a certain parts of it that it creates the items off of, and if multiple have the same exact things that it's looked for, it's just going to assign it to the first one. So if they're not different for like location or item type, it might just go to the first one that it sees, not necessarily the one that you want.
Yes, that's are you referring to when there's no subfield H in the record and there's just material type and collection to match on?
Well, even with subfield H, sometimes if everything, because subfield H doesn't necessarily mean you can have things set to the same place, because it doesn't, I don't believe it looks for, does it look for fun when it creates an item template? I don't think it does. So if you're doing things off the same location and item type, I think are the main two things it looks at when it's creating something, and collection.
Right. No, it does not look at the fund. But if the subfield H has a code that does not match to an actual item template, it will look at the collection and material type combination to find a template. And then if it's not missing, I mean, if that information, it does not match a template, it will match to the first one in the list. I think it's what it does.
I think Brad has a point with that, because when we set up our circulating templates versus our hot templates, we could not use certain values in there so that it wouldn't do exactly what he was saying, match it to the circulating, since that was sometimes first, or match the circulating copies into the hot order, because those came first depending on how the selector gridded the Baker and Taylor carts. So yeah, there are some certain caveats in how you do create those.
Yeah, I think if the item templates, if you're using two different templates and they have the same collection, then it'll see the two separate polys as duplicates and it'll put them all in the same poly. So to get them into two different ones for like a regular and a hot pick, like Kathy's saying, we changed our on order item template for hot picks to have the collection blank. So it won't see them as duplicates and it'll leave them separate in separate polys.
That's exactly what we had to do. And the other thing we find with bulk add is anything that's matching to a multi-volume record, we have to handle those separately, because otherwise if we use our usual matching temp or vendor record import profile, it'll put multiple volumes into the first volume that it sees, so that you're ordering, say, 4 copies of volume 1, not volumes 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we set up a separate bib load for those specifically to create provisional records, so that we can go through and then make sure at least we're ordering the right items. I don't know if you're creating, how that's going to impact creation from a record set with a multi-volume record.
Karina responded in chat that she uses the same grid for multiple copies, but if some prize pick or just new fiction, then she just does the bulk change for the on order item record fields after releasing the purchase order. Are there any other questions?
Just to backtrack on that, I'm not sure who spoke up just prior to this about the record that had multiple volume. How do you guys order something like that, especially the graphic novels?
I go through, because well, I do ordering from Ingram for most of it, and when I go through, I go and take it off and then enter in a new item line with the correct one, because when it's adding from the bib, it's just taking the last 020 line. That's what it pulls it off of, so that it just sees you want 4, and then it's going to take from that last 020 line. Sometimes it's also like if you're ordering something and somebody else has is doing this another order and it adds another 020. If it's a different version, it will pull whatever version is the last 020, not necessarily the one that you imported. So you have to double check and make sure that it's your item, because I've had it where I've ordered a hardcover, I thought, but actually the last 020 was a paperback. So then the paperback comes in instead of the hardcover. So you kind of have to double check beforehand before you actually release the item to like for doing EDI, you have to make sure you're doing it that way.
And my question is, if it's a 2021 release, can we put in the new 020 or that ISBN into that bit record?
It's going to depend on how your order is set in there. Because if you already have multiple copies in one purchase order line item, but each copy is meant to be a different volume, you're going to have to edit that one to be one of the volumes and then add each of the other volumes separately. What we've asked our selectors to do, and we order our graphic novels and manga from Baker and Taylor, is our selectors create separate carts for those, because from the vendor website, they don't have multi-volume records. They have single volume records. So then when we load those vendor records in, our bib load profile is set to create provisional records, which then we flip and then go back and merge into the right records later, at least after we've ordered the correct items up front.
Okay.
It's not necessarily a perfect way to do it, but we're trying to find the way that's going to be most efficient for our staff. And that's what we found works for us.
Yeah, I just haven't found a proper way to order graphic novels, you know, and I'm just trying to find that, like you said, an efficient way to order it, especially when it's like replacement copies and all that, when we ordered all it in bulk. The selector orders it all in bulk, and I'm just trying to, and when they put it in one cart, you know, and create, you know, the poly, it's all in one poly versus like, you know, a different poly. So, okay, thank you.
This sounds like it would be a good topic to add to the learning portal for acquisitions tips, maybe on how to handle multi-volume records. I was wondering if anyone would like to work on that with me so that I could describe it properly.
I could if no one else wants to.
Great.
All right, that sounds like a great project. Are there any announcements anyone needs to make, would like to make?
This is Joe again from Huntley. We're going to be closing next Monday, the 15th, through April 27th, I think it is, to move into our addition. We're a little excited about that, but we will have no phones and limited access to email during this time as they're setting up new phone systems and moving the computers. And that, so if people are sending emails to us, we might be a little slow getting back to you.
That's exciting. I'm looking forward to that same process, but probably not till later in April. Crystal Lake's been closed since December 12th. So the project is moving along, but we're not there yet.
Corinne is asking Joe if you're going to be working from home so you have access to email.
We are going to be at the library most of the time. Some of the time we will be at home, and if I'm at home, I'll have access to email. They're hoping to get some people up and running sooner, I think, than later. We have hit a few snags, but we're not changing our timeline. For the closure dates, we're just kind of reworking our schedule of how we were moving things. So like that first week that we're closed, we'll still have computers, but we'll be busy packing up offices and stuff like that. So people might not be at their desk to answer emails. we'll just make sure that we try and check once or twice a day. We'll do the best we can. I get alerts on my phone, so if there's something, it'll pop up on that. And if I need to, I can answer it sooner rather than later. We're just not quite sure what to expect during this process, since we have hit a few snags. But like I said, we're just trying to work around it. We haven't quite gotten the furniture yet. So that's kind of hitting a snag with some of the new office setups. Tech services is going to be in a temporary location because our offices are going to kind of stay where they are now. So it's in this second phase where they're renovating the existing building. So we won't get our new stuff until December when the project is all done. And that, but again, you know, you can send emails. It just might take a while to get back to people.
It's very exciting. Any other announcements? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Yes, Karen. We always have to have our chocolate available to keep energized. Even if we're not moving, chocolate is a requirement. All right, so I heard a motion to adjourn. So our next meeting is on June 9th, and it will probably also be Zoom. And I will see you all then. Thanks for coming.